For as long as humans have looked up at the stars, watched lightning split the sky, or wondered what happens after death, we have searched for answers. Some answers came through religion, some came through history, some came through science. At first glance, these three may seem like separate worlds. Science studies nature. History studies the human past. Religion explores meaning, purpose, morality, and the divine. But throughout human civilization, they have often crossed paths. Sometimes they worked together. Sometimes they disagreed. Sometimes they shaped each other in ways we still feel today. This is not simply a story of conflict. It is the story of humanity trying to understand reality. Long before laboratories, telescopes, universities, or written books, early humans lived close to nature. They watched the seasons change. They tracked the moon. They learned when animals migrated, when rivers flooded, and when crops could grow. Their survival depended on observing the world carefully. This was an early form of science: observation, memory, pattern recognition, and testing what worked. But the world was also mysterious. Why did storms come? Why did the sun return every morning? Why did people dream? Why did life end? Was there something beyond what the eye could see? Religion and mythology helped ancient people explain the unknown. Stories of gods, spirits, creation, death, and cosmic order gave meaning to a world that could feel dangerous and unpredictable. In ancient cultures, science and religion were not always separate. The priest, the healer, the astronomer, and the historian could sometimes be the same person. To study the sky was not only to measure stars. It was also to search for signs. To write history was not only to record events. It was also to explain how a people understood their place in the universe. In ancient Egypt, religion, engineering, mathematics, and astronomy were deeply connected. The pyramids were not just tombs. They were religious monuments, political symbols, and engineering achievements. Building them required mathematics, labor organization, architecture, and knowledge of the stars. The Nile River shaped Egyptian life. Its flooding cycle influenced agriculture, calendars, taxation, and religious festivals. Observation of nature became tied to divine order. In Mesopotamia, priests observed the heavens and recorded celestial events. They studied the movement of planets and stars, partly for religious and political reasons. Over time, these records helped form early astronomy. In ancient India, China, Greece, and the Islamic world, scholars asked deep questions about the body, the cosmos, mathematics, morality, and existence. Many early thinkers did not see a hard wall between scientific curiosity and spiritual belief. They believed that studying nature could reveal something about order, wisdom, or divine design. This is one of the first major connections between science and religion. Both began with wonder. Science asked, "How does the world work?" Religion asked, "Why does the world exist, and what does it mean?" Ancient Greek thinkers changed the story. Philosophers such as Thales, Aristotle, Plato, and others began looking for natural explanations for the world. They asked whether events could be explained by reason, causes, and principles rather than only by myth. This did not mean religion disappeared. Greek society remained deeply religious, but a new habit of thought began to grow. The universe might be understandable. Nature might follow patterns. Human reason might discover truth. This was a major step toward science. Aristotle studied animals, logic, physics, politics, ethics, and metaphysics. His ideas would influence both science and theology for centuries. This matters because later religious thinkers, especially in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, would use Greek philosophy to explain their beliefs in a more logical and structured way. So again, science, history, and religion were not isolated. They were exchanging ideas. Many people today imagine the medieval period as a time when religion completely blocked science. But the real history is more complicated. Religious institutions often preserved knowledge. Monasteries copied manuscripts. Scholars translated ancient texts. Religious schools eventually helped give rise to universities. In the Islamic Golden Age, scholars made major advances in mathematics, medicine, astronomy, optics, geography, and philosophy. Many of these scholars believed that studying creation was a way of honoring the Creator. Names like Al-Khwarizmi, Ibn Sina, Al-Hazen, and others helped shape knowledge that later influenced Europe. In medieval Europe, Christian thinkers such as Thomas Aquinas tried to reconcile faith and reason. Aquinas argued that truth could not ultimately contradict truth. If God created the world, then reason and observation could help humans understand that creation. This did not mean every idea was accepted. There were boundaries, conflicts, and religious authorities who resisted certain claims. But the relationship was not simply religion stopped science. Often, religion funded learning, preserved texts, and provided the worldview in which scholars asked questions. At the same time, science had not yet become the modern system we know today. It was mixed with philosophy, theology, astrology, medicine, and speculation. History shows us that the separation came gradually. Then came a turning point. The scientific revolution changed the way humans investigated reality. Thinkers such as Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, Newton, and others helped transform science into a method based on observation, mathematics, experimentation, and repeatable evidence. The Earth was no longer seen as the fixed center of the cosmos. The heavens were not perfect and untouchable. The same laws that govern falling objects on Earth could describe the motion of planets. This was revolutionary, but it also created tension. Some religious interpretations had placed Earth and humanity at the physical center of creation. When astronomy challenged that view, it challenged not only science but also identity, authority, and interpretation. Galileo became the most famous symbol of science-religion conflict. His support for heliocentrism, the idea that Earth moves around the sun, brought him into conflict with church authorities. But even here, the story is not simple. Galileo himself was religious. Many early scientists believed in God. Newton wrote deeply about theology. Kepler saw mathematical harmony in the universe as evidence of divine order. The conflict was not always between science and religion themselves. Often it was between new evidence and old interpretations, individual inquiry and institutional authority, changing knowledge and fear of losing certainty. In the 1800s, Charles Darwin introduced another major challenge with the theory of evolution by natural selection. Darwin's work suggested that life developed through natural processes over vast periods of time. For some religious believers, this seemed to conflict with traditional creation stories. For others, evolution became a way to understand how life could unfold through laws built into nature. This debate continues today in some communities, but many religious traditions now accept evolution in some form. They may see Genesis or other creation texts not as modern science textbooks, but as theological stories about meaning, purpose, and humanity's relationship with God. This is an important distinction. Science studies the mechanisms of life. Religion often asks about the meaning of life. Science can describe how stars form, how cells divide, and how species change. Religion asks why existence matters, what humans owe to one another, and whether there is a purpose beyond survival. When these fields stay within their strengths, they can coexist. When either one tries to answer every question alone, conflict often begins. History plays a special role in this story. History does not prove or disprove God. History does not perform laboratory experiments. But history shows how people have believed, questioned, discovered, fought, adapted, and changed. History reveals that religion has inspired art, law, charity, education, music, architecture, and moral reform. It also reveals that religion has sometimes been used to justify violence, control, exclusion, and resistance to new knowledge. History reveals that science has improved medicine, transportation, communication, agriculture, and our understanding of the universe. It also reveals that science, when separated from ethics, has been misused in war, exploitation, surveillance, and harmful experiments. So history teaches humility. It shows that human beings can use powerful ideas for good or harm. Religion can inspire compassion or control. Science can heal or destroy. History records both. Science, history, and religion connect in several powerful ways. 1. They all search for truth. Science searches for truth through evidence, testing, and observation. History searches for truth through documents, artifacts, memory, and interpretation. Religion searches for truth through revelation, tradition, spiritual experience, moral reflection, and sacred texts. They use different tools, but each responds to the human desire to know. 2. They all shape civilization. Science changes what humans can do. Religion changes what humans value. History explains how humans got here. Together, they influence laws, cultures, wars, medicine, education, calendars, architecture, and identity. 3. They all depend on interpretation. Scientific data must be interpreted. Historical evidence must be interpreted. Religious texts must be interpreted. Disagreements often happen not because people have no evidence, but because they interpret evidence differently. 4. They all require humility. Science changes when better evidence appears. History changes when new sources are discovered. Religious understanding can deepen as people reflect across generations. The wisest thinkers in all three areas understand that human knowledge is limited. Even though they connect, they are not the same. Science is strongest when asking, what is matter made of? How does gravity work? What causes disease? How old is a fossil? How do planets move? History is strongest when asking, what happened? Who recorded it? What evidence remains? How did people understand their world? How did one event lead to another? Religion is strongest when asking. Religion can give purpose, but it should be careful when making claims about nature that can be tested and corrected. Each field has power. Each field has limits. Today we live in a world shaped by all three. A hospital is built on science, but often filled with spiritual questions. A courtroom uses historical evidence, but also moral ideas about justice. A space telescope uses advanced physics, but the images it captures can stir something deeply spiritual in people. When we see galaxies billions of light years away, science gives us the data. History tells us how humans develop the tools to see them. Religion and philosophy ask what it means that we exist in such a vast universe. Modern people do not always have to choose between wonder and evidence. In fact, science can increase wonder. The more we learn about DNA, stars, ecosystems, and consciousness, the more mysterious and beautiful reality can become. For some people, this wonder points toward God. For others, it points toward nature itself. For others, it remains an open question. But the wonder is shared. Science, history, and religion are three different ways humanity has tried to understand existence. Science gives us explanations of the natural world. History gives us memory and perspective. Religion gives many people meaning, morality, identity, and hope. They have not always agreed. They have sometimes collided. But they have also built civilizations together, preserved knowledge, inspired discovery, and shaped the deepest questions humans ask. Maybe the real lesson is not that science and religion must always be enemies. Maybe the lesson is that truth is too large for pride. Science reminds us to test what we think we know. History reminds us that humans have been wrong before. Religion reminds many people that knowledge without wisdom can become dangerous. And together, they tell one of the greatest stories ever told. The story of human beings standing between earth and sky asking, where did we come from? Why are we here? How should we live? And what, if anything, lies beyond what we can see?